Boris,
Sam.
hi. Wow, we're taking this to the next level.
Yeah, we are filming ourselves from 3 different devices
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
With the mirror so that we can kind of get extra us
Extra coverage. Yeah.
in the coverage.
Well, the mirror is not pointing in the right direction, but yeah, we know it's there, so that's what matters.
The 30 views we were getting from your podcast.
30 is
each
a rather
week.
generous number. I would go with 10, to be more precise.
30 people made it to the SoundCloud page.
Yeah, like
15.
Total of 30 listeners. So yeah, we're taking this to the next level, hopelessly trying to reach more audience and desperately.
Desperately.
Yeah, hopefully and desperately. Yeah, is that corrected?
Well, speaking of hopeful and desperate, Boris, today we want to talk about protesters in France.
Yes, exactly. A lot of hope and hopelessness and desperation. Well, the reason why we wanted to talk about protests is kind of obviously, really, there are huge protests happening now in France, and the reason is, as some of you are already familiar with, is that there was a case of excess police brutality that was somehow very French, very local colors, when a couple of police officers violated certain young fellow belonging, if I'm not mistaken, to a minority group.
They basically
that's stereotypically associated with, petty crime.
They basically had arrested, and this is about 2 weeks ago now, but had arrested a couple of youths, and one of them from the banlieue, the housing commission areas on the outskirts of Paris, and in arresting him they managed to stick a baton up his bum and did it with such force that they perforated his anus, and he's spending I think 3 months recovering from it. So pretty
that
nasty.
Sounds painful.
Yeah.
The way you phrased it though is quite interesting. They managed to do that as if it was like a coincidence or a mishap. It's like someone tripped and then fell with the baton.
I tripped and a baton went up my ass.
Yeah.
Went up his ass. Yeah. Look, it is. I think this is probably one reason why this particular incident has kicked off such such ferocious, I wouldn't say ferocious, such high intensity rioting, because it is such a horrific case of police brutality. I mean, it's not, as you say, it's not like that he just got a black eye in being punched or roughly
this actually
handled.
involves some effort. Like, you have to undress the guy and you have to do it. So it's not like he was trying to escape. They had to tackle him down. He broke a couple of ribs. You could say that those things happened by accident, or like he was resisting arrest. He was punching the police, so they really went over the line with him. This seems as if it involved some sort of premeditation or like additional efforts to commit, so it makes it more difficult to understand, like, why would he do that?
It's just, I mean, I think it's not an incident that's isolated. There is, I think it was, has been a lot of instances of police being exceptionally rough and violent on people in the French banlieue. And I think this incident was probably just overstepped the line, and it really, yes, it's a rape.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it qualifies.
It qualifies as it is a rape, and I think it has attracted national attention. I mean, President Hollande visited the guy in the hospital bed.
The very mention of President Hollande funny, or just your own reflection is?
Oh, it's just getting musical requests getting requests from users to tell other stories, which we'll get to in a minute. But this isn't actually
not at all a laughing matter.
Just not a laughing matter. Just
weird sense of humor there.
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, user Martin. I will get to the story of the Miss Eurostar in due course. Oh no, shit. All right. Well, anyway, so there's been a whole lot of riots. So I tuned in to see what the coverage was going on, and my new go-to site for news, Breitbart Media, was reporting that something like 47 cars and 147 bins have been destroyed in
they
recent riots.
counted the bins.
Yeah, exactly.
That's journalism for you, Sam. Take notes.
It's like pretty much equating.
That's investigating. Yeah.
Pretty much equating a high-value personal possession, aka a car, with
A bin.
a bin, public property, with something that you discard the trash in anyway. So.
I think that was a subtle commentary on French automotive industry.
Yeah.
Like,
What's the bigger pile of trash?
yeah.
47 huge hunks of trash and
147 regular piles of trash.
regular piles of trash were.
Well, not to get too off topic here, talking about
we'd hate that.
bins. Yeah. So, like, what strikes me as odd in this particular case is that, you know, you would say that these police officers who performed the act of rape seeked to emasculate this fellow because it's like a rape, and that's like something that rape is supposed to do, right? Like to make the victim feel powerless and to make it like break their confidence. So it's not like if he was just kicked around by the police, then you can, you know, that doesn't really harm you as a person. That doesn't really leave like structural damage on your, you know, very being. But this like had that dimension, it seems. Like if they
certainly seems to have been a very humiliating abuse.
But what I want to know is like, so you basically spent some time with the police back when you were doing time. Yeah, I'm kidding you.
That too, but
yeah.
in a professional context, I also did spend time with the police.
Yeah, so you were like following them around, and you had the chance of like seeing the world through their eyes for a moment, and like understanding their motivation. And it's not easy for them, you know, to go out and be in constant danger. And so there's like their side of the story as well.
Yeah, look, I spent some time with the Victoria Police. I spent 2 years working on their magazine, the public relations magazine, which was a very good read actually. We had a few. There was the favourite edition I put out was the one when we had the accidentally put the severed head on the.
Yeah, I can see where a sense of humour comes from. So we stole the severed head from a morgue. It's supposed to be a joke.
We hadn't checked the images very well, and we're doing we were doing a story on the police who investigate major accidents, and we hadn't proofread we'd proofread the story, but the text, but not the images, and only when we'd printed 13,000 copies did we see that there was. In one of them, you could see this guy's severed head on the dashboard. So this was for a kid audience, a kiddie-friendly magazine.
The photo you've taken from Rotten.com, I imagine.
Yeah, we didn't put that one out to the public in the end. But the police mentality is one of, to a certain extent, it's one of you're constantly under siege. If someone comes up to you on the street, you don't know whether they're asking directions or going to stab you. So there's this constant feeling that people are out to get you, and you know they do see the worst of society, and they're the ones who are obviously who are charged with cleaning up and dealing with the worst bits of society. I'm not talking about people, but seeing the worst of humanity on a daily basis, and so it does create this very besieged mentality. And I did a ride along once with Victoria Police, and you know we were going out to see. They heard on the police radio that there were some Aboriginal guys causing, you know, being drunk and abusive, drunk and disorderly, on Burke Street, and the police. One of the guys is like, "Oh, those bloody Aborigines at it again." And
so you're saying there's an element of racism there, like.
Yes, absolutely racism, but it's also racism that comes from. It was also rooted in their experience of kind of frustration that they'd seen these you know they knew that particular group of drunk guys because they'd been causing trouble for a long time over.
Would that make some sort of an awkward friendship between them if they're constantly called to intervene and there's always the same group of guys, so they get to know each other?
There certainly is that. There certainly can be that sense of familiarity, and that's actually part of the police relationship building with people is that you know you do get to know people who are repeat offenders, and there is definitely a level of compassion among many police for the victims, and obviously the victims, but also the offenders, in that they know that you're not just a person isn't just a bad person, but often they're lashing out at circumstances or perceived injustice or blah blah blah. So I think you have to see people's when people commit crimes, there is often an important contextual element to that. But I can see with the police in this going to the banlieue. I mean, obviously
they sort of lack the compassion, you would say, in this particular case.
In this particular case, they certainly lacked.
Or they found a very strange way of showing it,
well.
But I want to know. So, okay, you spent time with the force, and what do you think can drive a policeman to do something as brutal and as unappealing as this? Like, what would have to tip him over the edge? What would be the final drop? The final straw? Like,
Just constantly being on the receiving end of a barrage of abuse and humiliation. I mean, in Victoria, for example, when you're talking about emergency services, you've got the ambulance guys, you've got the fire engine guys, firemen, what do you call ambulance drivers? Ambos. Call them.
Ambulance drivers.
Ambos. And the answer's 3, Martin. but I'm only going to tell you the 2, and we'll get to that private in-joke later on in the story. And when ambos and firemen turn up to an emergency situation, they're often cheered and thank God these guys are here. Yet when police turn up to a situation, they're booed and
Yeah, but see, I really want to know about this very paradoxical situation. So if you're a police officer and the entire world hates you for, you would say, obvious reasons, but then you are seen as someone who's very abusive, but still you receive a lot of abuse. So that seems as a bit of a paradox. So you say that the policemen are on the constant end of abuse and humiliation on the receiving end, and so they themselves receive a lot of that shit, and then they are seen as offenders, right? They're seen as the ones who abuse. So
yeah, well, there's obviously limits of there's limits to how they're reasonably allowed to act, and it's always the reasonable use of force. If someone comes at you with fists, you can come at them with a baton. If they come at you with a knife, you can draw your taser. I mean, it's always just a
can you draw your gun at a knife? Is that like?
Oh, I don't know how it works, but basically it would be seen as inadequate, as inappropriate use of force if someone was yelling at you from across the street and you drew your gun on them. That would be.
Yeah, that's kind of an obvious one.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Well, it isn't. It is to us now, but it wasn't. Victoria Police in the 90s, when they deinstitutionalised a lot of the psychiatric wards, and there was a lot more people with mental issues came onto the street. That meant there was a lot more people who were kind of crazy and prone to doing.
To put it in politically correct terms, crazy people.
Batshit crazy, yeah. A lot of crazies out there. Yeah, no, but you know what I'm saying. And police actually had to update their manual. There was a spate of police shootings, and in response to that, they looked at how they were training police and gave them. They go through every 3 months. They have to do new firearms and tactical training, and it's really to instill in police a culture that of only using the level of violence required, or force, as you'd say. I actually haven't seen this protest other than on the news, and I certainly haven't seen any of these. None of the bins in the vicinity of my house have been vandalised or destroyed. But there was actually
apart from the ones you vandalized yourself.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But the last time last May there was another set of police riots which were sparked off by the 1 year shooting of another guy from the banlieue, and that was when I came down, and by the canal I came down, and there was just this. The whole air was full of what do you call it? Tear gas.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a burning car. There was shops had been looted and burnt and smashed up. There was some really horrific riots that happened right on my doorstep. So they do actually flare up in this part of Paris.
Future
quite
comes
regularly.
early, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It was a taste of things to come.
Well, this is very different. As I was coming to your place and I was going down Boulevard Magenta, and so basically you had these police cars all over the place, and they would like frisk you as you like at the top of the street, and so they would, you would go down, and then they would like check you again, and so all circulation was cancelled, like all the traffic was
So
cancelled.
you got frisked.
Yeah, totally. They were like, yeah, open your coat.
Lift up your hair.
Yeah.
When you're hiding under there. No. Oh,
You don't want to know, yeah. 2 knives
Yeah.
and a gun. No, but then I reached, the Place de la République, and there's not a lot of people there, like, so basically there were more police.
Surprise.
Yeah, like there were more police, personnel than there were actual protesters. So it's like, and all of the other entry points to the Place de la République were also, heavily guarded by the police. And I think it's like especially, I don't know, bizarre that this was a protest directly oriented against the police, and then you have the police like protecting, the protest, trying to make it, as civic as possible. But they are the ones who are being protested against, so it's a weird situation,
What would you
I don't know, employ the army, like
nuke 'em?
nuke 'em. No, not to scatter them, but like to, whatever. Or I don't know, gendarmerie or like some other, like...
With the CR. Okay, so there is a distinction in Paris and France between local police, and then they have the national gendarme. It just depends on the size of the town what police force you have. And in Paris they tend to use these riot squad police called the CRS, who look like foot soldiers from the Ninja Turtles.
The Foot Clan, you mean?
But always with these little berets. It's always a bit like they went
Fashionable Foot Clan soldiers, yeah.
They
are French after all. Yeah.
They are foot soldiers on the weekend, fashion police on the fashion police in their spare
police,
time.
Yeah. That's what they have to know as well. Like,
well, it was the same riot police who went on protest a few years ago because there was a ruling that potentially they would lose their right to drink a glass of wine at lunchtime. Yeah. It was absolutely on duty. And I'm like, why are you protesting? This sounds entirely common sense. I didn't see giving armed guys dressed like foot soldiers the right to drink.
Well, see, that's the thing in France, in Paris, it's kind of hard to distinguish between protests that actually make sense, like this one happening right now, and the protests that make no sense whatsoever, like that one. They're protesting to have their wine taken away from them, so they wouldn't be able to.
To be fair, that was more of a voice to the police union, and that was more just police went on strike over that one. Police didn't go and strike protesters.
Yeah, who would protect those protests if policemen are the ones doing the strike and protest? Like, who would secure that? That's the bit of a meta.
The army.
Yeah, the army, obviously.
Don't know.
Yeah.
The funniest protest I saw was when I came to France in 2007 in Montpellier, and there was a big student. They were pushing through big education reforms back then, and it was, I think the goal was, I can't remember what they were protesting at. But basically, there was huge education reforms, and so this small group of students got together and barricaded the universities and stopped anyone coming in, and stopped fellow students being able to go to school for about 3 months, and put off, a whole year of people then had to resit months and months of school because they'd failed their final exams because they'd been able to get in because fellow students had blocked them. But it was this funny situation where I saw one protest in the street, and it was all these students marching against the reforms, whatever. And then about 20 minutes later, I saw this second protest, which was a group of students protesting the protesters.
Oh, wow, very meta.
yeah, exactly. So I thought the best way to protest a protest is to have a protest.
Yeah, wow. So it's like an endless loop of protests here in France, is basically what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's kind of like a normalization of protests, which makes it all like a daily quotidian thing. And then when you have actual protests that make sense, they just kind of melt with the whole, crowd of other protests. It's like, yeah, they're just protesting again, whatever. And it doesn't really matter if it's like a really significant issue or if it's just like some bullshit issue, like students protesting against student protests, you know. So
Yeah, so and I have asked that question before too, because in Melbourne, when there's a massive protest, then it's you know, you think, wow, this is a major event. It takes a real issue to get Melburnians out of their cafes, off their arse and onto the street to actually protest something. And whereas in France, it's more of, at the first hint of an issue, they'll get out and protest.
well, I don't know, when did you come in 2007, but I don't know if you remember, here in Paris there were huge strikes of SCNSF and RATP. So basically what happened is that they wanted to take away certain privileges from the train conductors.
Yeah, they wanted to take my privilege away to actually ever make it to the airport when it was due to fly home.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened in September and partially October 2007 is that metro did not work for a month and a half. So imagine like the city of Paris, you know, that has a lot of people living in it, 2 million in city proper and 12 million, you know, if you look at the region of Ile-de-France. So it was completely paralyzed because metro would not work. And like that
Paris, that's where Paris comes from.
Yeah.
Parisized.
Yeah, exactly, paralyzed, yeah. So a month and a half, I was living in the 19th, didn't have a bike, so I would have to like walk, you know, to university. And you just say, like, and the thing is, like, they were taking the privilege of, you know, train drivers, I don't know how to call them, like, operators. Because back in the day when trains were actually, you know, ran on coal, so you'd have to feed coal into the machine. It was a physical work, and they had like a certain benefits. They were receiving like an extra salary because it was seen as a hard physical work.
And also the life expectancy back then.
Yeah,
was
as well, and
only,
you know,
like,
breathing in the fumes and everything.
fumes.
Yeah, so seeing how trains are electrical, like for the last, I don't know, 50 years or something, like they don't really, it's just pushing the buttons from your chair, so it's not hard work.
Modern day DJs.
Yeah, exactly. And so they wanted to take that, you know, privilege and salary away, and then protested for a month and a half, and the whole city was paralyzed. And I'm like, you know, okay, I'm always, you know, for workers' rights, and I'm basically for, you know, workers fighting for their own. But this seemed just excessive. Like, you know, you're not actually protesting a right cause, you know, and you're paralyzing the entire city, you know. Or what? So, you know, you get those protests you can't really sympathize with, and then you have these protests that you kind of sympathize with. I mean, or you know, you should at least.
But either way, the Joe public gets fucked over because these things do can cause mass disruption to the general public. I found that I became less sympathetic to the cause because it was just causing me a whole bunch of strife. I always thought if you want to shut down the airport or whatever, at least do it when there's some major international delegations due, so that it's actually
you're hurting the people in power, not
exactly.
just your regular, you know,
just me trying to get home for Christmas.
Civilians, yeah. But do you think there's a potential, like, for this particular protest to be the, you know, the final drop, like that's gonna light the fuse?
You know what? I think it probably does have poignancy right now, because we are leading up to the elections, and there is the National Front is campaigning on an anti-immigration, anti-delinquency.
Yeah, this
platform.
entire incident is basically their program, right? Their political.
Exactly, it's fuel. So it's definitely and a lot of police are pro Marine Le Pen, the National Front party. So. It definitely is a very relevant issue right now. So it does actually have a lot more poignancy this year than, say, the one last year when they smashed up all the street and.
So let's bring like some conspiracy theories to play. Do you think this
actually open Breitbart News again, or?
It's open all the time. So yeah. So yeah, do you think this might be staged then? Like, this might be like a galvanizing moment for one of the interested parties, you know.
I don't think it's staged. Like what? You're buying into the whole.
I'm not buying. I'm just asking. Like, you know,
thing of the in the American, when they said said that Sandy Hook. Oh yes, right. The American Infowars commentator who said that Sandy Hook was staged. Like, I just think it's. I think it's so beyond the pale for a political party to organise even themselves, let alone organise some kind of mass conspiracy on multiple levels. I think it's.
So it's not that you think they find it immoral; they're just not capable of any actual conspiracy.
Couldn't organise a piss pot in a brewery, like. No, these pissed up in a brewery. These guys are just, I mean, they're so dysfunctional. It'd just.
But
be
what if they're just like they're masked? They pretend to be dysfunctional. They're actually pulling all the strings behind the
Yeah,
curtains.
we never
like-
got the point of these conspiracy theories who say that. I mean, what are they trying to suggest that there's?
Well, I don't know, like crowd control. Like you're actually looking at one way, while this other way there's something else going on. I mean, that's the general like.
Yeah, the bait and switch. But look, it does,
Yeah.
bait and switch does happen in politics, but nowhere near on this scale. I mean, it doesn't even warrant.
So what I find interesting is like that you can blow up a certain event that was something that was between, let's say, 5 people at the most. The policemen that brutalized
so
these guys, and then it became like a national issue. And so 60-something million people are participating. The entire public of France, you could say. And, I mean, at least they know about it, right? It became a public issue, and it's just something that a guy did, like in a moment of blind rage or in a moment of like irrational decision making, and then it became,
Well, this is
like
why
a global event.
police have such responsibility to exercise their force with due care, because they do something. If they lose it in a critical moment, like seems to be what's happened here, then there can just be horrific consequences.
Yeah, and they contribute to the overall bad image of the police that's already pretty, tarnished.
Yeah, and look, it's really unfair. I mean, back in Victoria Police again, but it was, there was corrupt cops, and there was corruption, but 99% of the people were doing it because they felt this really keen sense of public service and duty to serve, and that's admirable. And you can't, I don't think you can tarnish the vast majority of policemen out there just because some of them have brutalised this young person. But it does for me raise questions of training at the top, the training that they're being given. So if these incidents
So
keep happening,
what do you think is the motivation to become a police officer then? Like, what do you think if they have such a bad reputation and overall, they're not like the most popular people? Like, what makes you want to become one?
Well, as I said, some people just have a sense of duty. I mean, and I think using the Victoria example again, it used to be the joke. The joke used to be that you joined the police if you couldn't get into the army, and then
enjoy the firemen if you couldn't join the police. Is there like a hierarchy?
But then the policemen actually got educated, and the average age of recruits went from 23 to 32, and usually people who'd already had one university degree, and it's people who were making a conscious decision to have a career change.
So if all else fails, we could go there and be a police officer. It's not too late.
It's
I
not
guess.
too late. No. They even had a recruit at 38 or 39 when I was there. So look, I think these people, police do often join up out of a sense of higher purpose, and you've got to actually admire that, because it's not easy to sign up to have a day job where you just actively have to participate in the.
Yeah, so I would have a question for you, because you spent some time with the New York police force as well, and the police department. And so, how would you compare like them to Australian and to French cops? Like, because in most cases when we hear about police brutality, it comes from the States, right? So it's like they've killed a guy who wasn't even packing any type of weapon. So you get all these news, right? They shoot at a person even before something happens. So. But then again, this thing that happened in France seems so much more devious and violent, because there was this humiliation factor, like that. So how would you compare the
two different things? But I think the main difference I saw in America is that because a lot of the population is there's a lot of guns circulating around the population that just isn't the case in Australia. So there is actually a lot more threat to cops. I think in New York alone, you've got. I think it's about 15,000 cops on Manhattan alone, and I think the year I was there's about 25 cops had been shot and killed. I mean, and then you've got the ones who are injured in the line of duty as well. So getting shot as a policeman is a real threat. So you do have that heightened level of tension from the beginning. There is, and you know, you'll see these bumper stickers on police cars in America saying, you know, if you've got a tip off about a police shooting.
Oh yeah, so that all over the place. Like, you know, they give you $10,000 in anonymity if you like snitch on a cop killer or someone who shot at a cop. And so like,
exactly,
it's all over the place. Yeah.
And look, I don't have a gauge on what the case is in France. I did have a funny French police. I've had a few funny French police stories. I had one when my first interaction with French police, and most of them have been good, was I was working at this horrific Australian bar in Montpellier, and the bouncer came in midway through my shift and said that the police were there because they'd called the police because they'd captured someone trying to steal my bicycle, which was chained up inside the fenced off the terrace area, and so I come outside and the police are like, "Oh, is this your bike?" And I'm like, yes. They're like, "Well, we've caught the policeman, we've caught the criminal or the guy or the suspect. Do you want to follow us to the station to make a statement?" And I said, "Sure." And they said, "Well, we can give you a lift in the car, but actually we can't because the
guy's there.
The guy's there in there. But what you can do is you can follow us on your bike." And I'm like, "Well, glad he didn't successfully steal the bike. Otherwise, how would I be riding there?" Anyway, so I followed them on the bike, and they purposely drove quite slowly enough for me to keep up with them. And then every traffic light, I'd be able to draw level and look at the guy inside and
staring down.
Like, "This is my bike. Got my bike."
What did he look like? The guy.
Well, I can dig out the police report if you want. Just
just like.
Like, what? It's all right, Boris. He's not still on the run. The case has been solved.
My bike is safe, huh?
So look, I've actually found the police here. Almost all the interactions I've had with them have been really positive and quite funny. They're usually quite fun.
Yeah. Well, I think the first interaction I had with the French police was in the New Year's of 2007. So from 2006 to 2007. So yeah, I was here with my sister. She wanted us to go to the Eiffel Tower at all costs, you know, which is like very tacky, but whatever. So yeah, we were there, and like nothing happened. So it was like one of the most monotonous, you know, New Year's Eves. Like we were just standing around.
What were you expecting to happen at the Eiffel Tower?
I think she was expecting for something like mysterious guest to happen in the middle of a podcast. But no, she was actually expecting for, I don't know, some sort of like celebration to take place or whatever. And then when the midnight, you know, struck, we wanted to approach the Eiffel Tower to see, you know, like people, you know, dancing around and putting on a show or whatever. And then the police just started moving in waves as if they were breaking up like a riot. And there was no riot.
But so actually they just wanted to get to the top for the fireworks.
No, seriously, like all of a sudden we had these waves of police and they were like in full gear, you know, shields. There was even like a water cannon. And you're like, what's going on? Like all of a sudden, you know, and it's like no one was rioting, no one was misbehaving. It was just people, you know, like being drunken and slightly disorderly, but nothing you wouldn't expect in a New Year's Eve. So yeah, we kind of ran, you know, and we sought for the streets.
We kind of ran, and as I was running, I just sort of smashed on some windows and, you know,
just kicking the teeth in down some cop's throat. But other than that, no, it just happened all of a sudden, right? All of a sudden, it was like a completely new situation. So you're in this room now, you know, and you're running away from the police, although you didn't do anything, right? And yeah, it was just very sudden and very, very unpleasant. But I don't know, were they like tipped off that there was, you know, terrorist attack going on or something? But yeah, it was very, you know, whatever. And yeah, very interesting New Year's Eve. But other than that, yeah, I would say that most of my experiences with French police force was rather neutral, like, you know, not especially positive or negative. Just, you know, they're doing their job, you know, they're being like modestly polite about it. And But I think there's also a big difference between like the center city police and the one that you can find in, you know, the outskirts of the city, like in one.
The thing that they have here is the rollerblade police, and I always.
Those are just so lame, like no sympathy for those guys.
I don't know whether Cam has joined in the listening, but
The rollerblade expert,
yeah, he's a rollerblading expert.
Well, actually, they are very courageous people. Who...
No, but he always had it. He always thought that if police on rollerblades were going to follow you, the easiest thing you could do was just to run over some grass. And
completely disables them, yeah.
Grass, gravel, and stairs, like.
Oh, stairs, yeah. The arch nemesis of...
Whoa, I'm going, whoa,
so what
chasing you.
So we have like the beat cops that are on foot, we have the rollerblades ones for just ridiculous, like the bike ones that have like slightly larger amount of respect they command, but like not too big, and then you have the car ones that are, I guess, well, you also have the ones on horses, right? Like
there's horse police, yeah. They're mainly public relations police.
The horsemen?
Yeah, they're for public relations purposes because people feel more secure when when the mounted branch is...
Well, you know, just a couple of days ago I was riding behind a horse and I didn't feel like safe at all, like because I needed to like drive around the horse and I was thinking like...
Police horse?
Yeah, it was a policeman on a horse.
What century was this?
Yeah, 2 days ago, so you told me. And I was like, you know that you're not supposed to approach the horse from the back because he can kick you, and basically kill you. And I'm like, I don't want that to happen, you know.
You're an expert on road rules these days, aren't you?
Yeah, these days. Yeah, good one, yeah. So, yeah, it didn't really make me feel all that safe, you know, with
all right, well, I don't know I think we've exhausted what we can talk about the police, but I'm going to talk about Martin Martin, by popular demand, we're going to just briefly talk about the Eurostar journey.
How is that related to protests?
It's not, but I'm reacting to to the only consistent live commenter through this podcast, and there's only 2 of them. So
the only possible like we will get from this. So yeah, we have to cater to the audience, I guess.
So Martin was visiting me, and this has absolutely nothing to do with cops, but it does have to do with the Eurostar. And he was due to catch his Eurostar at 5 o'clock on the second last Eurostar out of Paris that night, and absolutely had to be at work on Monday in London, and it was making good time, and then got lost in the labyrinth, which is Gare du Nord station, and lo and behold, he missed the train, and so he went to the ticket counter and said, "Help! I've missed my train. What can I do?" And the ticket woman behind the ticket desk was very helpful. She said, "Well, you have 2 options." He's like, "Right, I'm listening. The first option is you buy a new ticket in economy class for 160 euros." And he's like, "That is just absolutely ridiculous. You know, my original ticket only cost me 80 euros. You know, this is outrageous." The second option is that
first class.
Yeah, exactly. Business class for 140 euros. He's like, what? Well, this is ridiculous. You know, I can't believe you can't just rebook me, even if it is in business class. This is outrageous that I have to book it. Stop. There is a third option. Is that what? Yes. What's the third option? Well, I can just put you on the next train free of charge.
Yeah,
and
that's
like, I'll take the third option, thanks.
When I think about it, yeah. So yeah, let's try to bring that back to protests, just to give some semblance of coherence and structure.
I think what that proves is that if you do protest in Paris, that it can actually achieve your desired outcome.
Okay, that's a very nice conclusion.
Nice little dovetail.
Yeah.
Well, I think we'll call it a day, Boris. And thanks, Martin, for your enthusiasm to have that story broadcast to 3 more people in the world.
Yeah. That insightful comment that really
insightful comment.
Oh yeah, there's a like in question.
Oh. Well, thanks everyone, and we'll be back next week.